Welcome to the 1:30 August 15th City Council meeting. At this time, we will stand for the pledge and prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father God, we just come to you, Lord God, just thanking you, Lord, and just praising your name, Lord. God, I just come to you, Lord, thanking you for the concept of joy, Lord. And Lord, I just thank you, and I just ask that we just realize, Lord, that we are not fighting against people, Lord, but we're fighting against the enemy, Lord, and that we just need to show joy where we can, Lord, and that will be brought back to us, Lord. And I just thank you for just what you do for us, Lord, on an everyday basis, Lord, what you do for this community, what you do for the people that live here and the people that work here, Lord. And I just thank you for all the things that are going on in our community, Lord. And it's just a blessing, Lord, to see every time you open up social media, Lord, that you see something else happening here in Borger. And we're just thankful for that. And we just praise you, Lord, that you have blessed us so much. And I just thank you for everything. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. And at this time, we'll have questions and comments from any citizen, if there is any.
Reverend Bradley.
You're gonna take the long distance walk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bradley.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You can't hear me?
Yes.
I'll just speak louder. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for coming over and taking care of the house, 1425 Marigold Street. I know it's been a struggle. I know it was a problem to get it done, but those guys did a magnificent job, and I just wanted to let you guys know publicly. I told them that I was gonna do this to make sure that, Garrett, you called me the earlier part of July and told me that I was next on the list and they would be able to take care of that. They did. They did a great job, and I just want to say thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm Robert Bradley. I live at 1423 Marigold Street.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, we appreciate Mr. Bradley's patience. He kind of ran into, first of all, we lost our employee at the end of last year to retirement, so that's kind of dragged us down. And that particular house was, for better or worse, we don't tear down many brick houses.
Exactly.
So that created some new, unique challenges, but
Y'all did a great job. My next question before I leave, what happens with the property now?
it's still privately owned,
Still privately owned,
so
okay.
we'll put a lien on it for the cost to demolish the structure.
Okay. All right.
And more than likely, if they stop paying taxes, it would,
Okay.
based on the situation there, is kind of what I probably expect to happen. It will eventually end up back in the entity's name and then go to auction.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Enjoy your improved
Thank
view.
you.
That's the one we're gonna follow.
If there is no other, then we will move on to item 5, the city manager's monthly report.
So since we've got a few things on the agenda today, I'm gonna try to, maybe make this a little faster than we normally go, but finances are still looking pretty good. If you noticed, our revenue is still over our expenditures. So we're doing well there. We do anticipate both the general fund and the water sewer fund to end with a surplus at the end of the fiscal year. So that's, pretty good. You'll notice that we're kind of well above the 5-year averages, but we've got a lot of projects and a lot of spending kind of going on, especially in the water sewer fund. But like I said, the important takeaway I think there is that, revenues is over expenditures. Sales tax, still waiting for the detailed information for August's payment. August's payment was down 11%, but if you remember, July was up 17%, and June was down 10%, and May was up like 6%. So I'm not for sure why we're seeing all this heavy swing I do anticipate to be into the positive column once as we've got all these contractors in town now, but we are still positive for the year. So I think we're just kind of seeing some of those spending habits change with as the, inflation and cost everything goes up. We're seeing more shifting to non-taxable items, groceries, food, and regular cost of living things. But we are keeping an eye on that. Of course, then you'll see hotel occupancy tax remains strong. We're still above our budgeted numbers and above the 5-year average, and we anticipate that to probably be the case throughout the rest of this year as the turnaround starts September 18th. So overall, finance is looking pretty good. Going through our departments, plan development, they've received plans and are in the plan review phase for a remodel that's about to start at the Plaza Restaurant. We've issued the building permit for Jackson Hot Oil at the Enterprise Park. So, they'd previously started their dirt work, so you should start seeing actual building construction up there. Today, the Tidal Wave Car Wash was scheduled for their final inspection. Keep in mind that their final inspection is for like plumbing and utilities and stuff like that, because still got some stuff to go in, but that's progressing. As Mr. Bradley stated, we did get 1425 Marigold torn down as a substandard structure, and the next one on the list, which should start in the next week or two, is 108 Maple. If you remember, that's the house that we've had several comments about, the cats,
yeah.
and
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so that issue is about to be rectified. And then, we did last month debut our yard maintenance assistance kit, which we've got with some weed eaters and lawnmowers and tools and stuff. So we've had 10 people apply for that already in a month. So we are seeing some decent use with that as we try to get the coordination and cooperation of our citizens and keeping care of their own equipment. I think that's a pretty good number. That shows that there are some people that have not been able to take care of their yards and weeds because they don't have the equipment to do it, so I'm glad to see that.
I've got a question concerning that. Do we assist them in removing some of the weeds and stuff that aren't allowed to go in the dumpster, or?
Right now, we can assist them with the bulk waste trailer if they need a trailer, or maybe a green polycart, depending on what it is, if they don't have that. But
I was just thinking, since they didn't have the equipment, maybe they didn't have a way to disperse the stuff.
I believe the kit's coming with a trash can,
Okay.
so. But I do expect that to kind of be refined in the coming months as we kind of see how it's used and what our needs are. They've asked, code enforcement did ask if they could buy equipment for a few more. So I did tell them yes, that was a pretty cheap way to get some compliance. So in HR, it's been busy for Michelle down there. We do have 3 interns work for the city over the summer. They're getting ready to go back to school. You saw one of them up here a minute ago in our IT department. She's been definitely put to work. Nicole's been putting another one to good work out at the Dome and in our event plannings. Temporary and seasonal employees, our seasonal and temporary workers are pretty much all released now. So we have completed another successful swimming season in Park Rec, and the park maintenance workers and all that are done. And so I know that's a little bit of a relief for Michelle, but now we're also getting back into benefit season. So by the end of this week, we'll have our RFP in place for our health insurance.
It just came in, literally just came in.
Got it. So that should be going out next month. So we should be,
But didn't we put more part-time code enforcement?
they're regular part-time.
Oh, okay.
So we haven't let go of all the part-time employees, just the seasonal and temporary.
okay.
So, yeah, so like the alley crew is regular part-time.
Okay.
And so I know that's weird in some fancy HR classifications, but we do have regular part-time employees that work year-round.
Okay.
But, yeah, so we'll be going out for bid on our health insurance. TML has stated that they are intending to bid. We found out if they bid it, they use 2 years of rate history. If we renew, they use 5 years. So our 2-year rate history is better than our 5-year rate history. So it looks like even if we stay with TML, we should get a better rate than if we had just renewed. So I think the money that we've added into contingencies for that consultant to help us with the RFP is definitely going to pay off. And then we have filled a couple of vacancies this month. We'll talk about some of those in their other departments. And we've also been able to transfer some employees within the department, city as well, you know, kind of helping them promote their career path and move up. So that's always a good thing when we see that. In the finance department, I know that this is a big day for me and the entire finance department, you know, assuming we accept the audit and all of that goes well, which I have no doubt it will, but then we will be caught up and back on a regular schedule. So I know that we're pleased for all of that. I know that I joked with Terry a little bit earlier. She just reached her 6-month mark, and I immediately got some vacation requests because she thinks she wants to take off because Rob will be here in September to start work on the pre-work on the 2023 audit. So we're going to get this behind us and be caught up, but it's going to give us about a week or two break. So, you know, I told her that I would definitely be watching those uses because we don't, you know, like, you know, abuse of vacation.
Has she been here long enough?
We also, of course, have been working on the budget, and we'll talk a little bit about that on today's agenda, but most of that will be on the next agenda on September 5th. We've also been demoing some new ERP software, which is our enterprise resource management financial software, trying to get up into maybe a little more web-based and some easier access. We've been looking at Encode 10, which is the newer version of the product we use now, which seems to be, I think it gives us a lot of the features that we'd be looking for with integration with some of the things we've added, like the water smart billing and some of that stuff, without making too much changes on the user end, but give us some features. So we are kind of in the early stages of looking at that. And finance for the last 2 months has been able to close the month within 10 days, which has been our strategic goal for 3 years. So we appreciate their hard work and the department's working with finance department to start closing that month early. So that means all of our credit card receipts are in, the credit card payments are reconciled, and some of that's been changing, resulted from our change in credit card procedures, which, you know, was brought up in the last audit, which we had kind of started. So we did get that month changed. So what that really means is your financial statements are pretty much up to date. So before, they could be up to 6 months or 2 months behind on the credit card portion of it. So now we're back up, and so we're glad to be making those. Of course, fire department and police department are busy with the community events, you know, that's been going on in the fire department and some other things. The A shift completed the Stop the Bleed, Train the Trainer. So that's can be a companion to your craze training, your active shooter training. So you should probably start seeing some public classes coming out from that to start getting some education to the public. They've also been by several vacation Bible schools, you know, this time of the year, and, you know, it's definitely been hot enough that the little kids like getting sprayed with some water, and of course, everybody likes a big fire truck. They did a CPR class for groin dyke. They did the library boots and badges readathon and water gun fight, and they, along with the police department, were at the water fight for the end of Park Rec. So the cops and the police have definitely been wetter than they're normally used to. And they also did the back to school fair. And of course, starting today, since today was the first day of school, the fire trucks are back out in the school zones with their banners, trying to get everybody slowed down the first week. And if you haven't seen a cop in the school zones, then clearly you probably don't need to be driving, because you must not be paying attention. Because they've definitely been visible, so we appreciate all of that. We actually did get notice, and I'll put it in your weekly update with some pictures, but our new aerial tower is working its way down the assembly line finally. So we should be on track for a November or December delivery of that new aerial apparatus, which will be a good benefit. Also, tomorrow, we're supposed to get the brush truck that's been on order for like 18 weeks. So, you know, it's kind of been the running joke. You know, they said they've been saying, you know, next week for like a year. So now it's Wednesday, and I'm like, of what month? But hopefully that'll be here tomorrow, and that's definitely, we've been lucky that we're down short with the one that was in the wreck, and this one that's been, you know, taking a little longer. We're lucky for the rain, but that big rain could be a big pain next year with all the fuels that's added. We did get 3. While it's been wet up here, the rest of the state hasn't. We've had 3 21-day deployments for TIFMAS and other parts of the state, including San Angelo and Fort Stockton. In those areas, we did not get called to Wichita Falls, but Mike and Archie and the fire module have been out quite regularly for about the last month, so we'll see some of that revenue coming in. We also were able, Jeff Steeg's was working with the state, and we actually got a grant to send some people to paramedic school. So we have 4 firefighters and 2 MS personnel that are going to attend paramedic school.
Great.
And so that's $48,000 that the state is going to cover the cost of.
Right.
Is that a
So,
match grant? or
nope, it's 100% covered.
That's good.
So, and the employee signs the agreement, so they're required to complete the course, and they are required to stay employed with us for 2 years after. Otherwise, they have to reimburse the state.
Oh, good. That's good.
So that is a good, I think, as we start progressing our professional development on some of those and getting some of those firemen cross-trained to be able to pick up some of those shifts too. So we're excited for that.
That's great. Who found that grant?
Jeff,
Jeff?
he's been working with the state. It's part of, because there's a big shortage in
Okay.
How will it affect their staffing while they're in school?
it's online, so they're not,
Okay.
other than their skills, so they'll be going through some online training, and then there's some training that's required on-site, but we'll be able to staff around that, so. We actually have started getting our first revenue back in from our EMS billings now, so we're starting to see that revenue. So your next monthly report, your next finance statement, you'll see some money coming into that line item, so that's pretty good. We're still billing ahead of what our projections were, and our collections so far have been a little higher than our projections, so I think we're gonna end up being in a good financial shape there as long as that keeps continuing. Public Works, of course, all over Public Works, they've been busy. We did complete the seal coating project for the year. That contractor, I thought did a really good job. They were in and out, and I didn't hear near as much complaining as I have in years past. I don't know about Winston and Jason, but I think it all went better. Last year was, I jokingly referred to as seal coat-ageddon. So the fact that it didn't quite blow up this year was good, and it definitely was needed in those areas. It's Sterling actually kind of looks nice now with the new
Yes, it does.
curb and gutter and all the
Much
new
improved.
chips, so that's
Yeah, it does.
exciting. We also got that big horrible area across from Paccasac milled down and
Yes.
filled before school.
I thought it was a canyon run.
That one's always been kind of hard because it is so heavily traveled, but even when school's not in session, but we knew that with school in session it'd be even worse, so we definitely wanted to get on top of that, so that's good with them. They also were able to get the crosswalks and everything remarked, ready for school season to start. They got the sand all down and right back up for Beach Bash, so that's all good. And then, of course, today, if you see them out, we're starting to work on cutting and milling the areas around the new curb and sidewalk on Main Street as we fill that. So you can kind of see on 7th Street what they're planning, but I know there's been some comments about the driveway to Jalisco's, but, don't forget, we're gonna take it back,
Yeah.
quite a ways, and then we will regrade that, so that problem should be.
How did, the railing, was that just specifically for that area? Or?
Yeah, because there are requirements when the grade changes so much to have the safety railing.
Okay, I see.
And so right there, since that, because the ADA accessible, the sidewalk has to be flat.
Okay.
And it has to be so wide. So to do it in that area, that's why you've got that drop off, which then requires the railing.
Okay.
So really, the sidewalk, the accessible path is next to the building. So what's down and by the curb is really not the path. But so they do that so that, you don't see the little lip and
I see.
trip
I was
and
just
fall.
wondering.
Looks nice, though. It
Yeah,
adds a
yeah.
little bit of
Looks really nice.
little bit of character. And like I said last month, we did get the amendment change for the pedestrian lighting. And so they will be going and adding that at some point. You'll notice where the little circle boxes are for those. They haven't poured the concrete around those yet, because when the lights come in, they'll have to, pour the footings for the lights. So they'll finish that off when they do that at the same time. It didn't make sense to fill it in and then dig it right out in a month when the lights come in. So, but that project's progressing really, really well. And I think once they get all that fixed, that'll be good. They're getting ready to start milling down 7th Street too, the intersection, so we're gonna completely redo that intersection right there. I know we've been getting some comments on that it's a bit rough. And so that's definitely on the short plan. Of course, recreation's definitely been busy this summer, but they have completed the swimming season and the park rec program, so I think both of those were big successes again this year. They, I believe, averaged a little over 200 kids every day this year for Park Rec, which is
A lot of kids.
which is up. And so they had lots of, I know that Manny and Isaac planned at least 2 special events each week between, you know, like the Phillips Engineers or the balloon guys, or they definitely had some new things there, and that was good. Pool, you know, did pretty well. And of course, that we had our Deidre's pool paw, animal paw tea Sunday. And so they,
How many dogs were there?
well, they did 19 chips and 15 vaccinations at the party, so animal control was pretty busy with that, so that
Did they
was,
swim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few videos we'll post of it. It was a lot, it was really cute. There was a Great Dane out there, not mine, but
Oh, cool.
they had a blast. I think there probably would have been a larger turnout, but a lot of the people that were showing up, their rabies tag or certificate didn't match their vaccinations card, so they were being turned away. They were just really making sure everybody was up to date
Yeah.
on shots and all that,
Yeah.
so not putting any animals at risk, but the ones that did bring it, they had a blast.
but yeah, so, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things they got planned in Deidre's section, but we've got some other events planned with the JPYC and public engagement. Solid waste, of course, we completed the trash bash this year, and so they collected, I think it was over 51 tons of trash, and
Yeah, there
it was a lot of tons of trash, and of course, everybody did take care of that. So we're gonna look at keeping on building that, so that was good. And they've also been busy. People are figuring out the bulk waste, self-help trailers, and so those are staying pretty busy. I think everybody seems to like that. It's a little better to back that trailer into your driveway or to use those than the roll-off, so that's been pretty good. Parks Department, with the help of the mitigation crew, got the hill behind Yucca Park mowed this last month, so that was, you know, kind of getting some complaints on that, so we got that taken care of. We do have all of the equipment for Huber Park has come in, and so right now we're looking at the last half of September. We'll get an exact date probably later this week, but they're looking at the last 2 weeks of September to get that installed. So we're excited to see that. And of course, all of them worked, Beach Bash and back to school. We also do have all the equipment for the, most all the equipment for the Huber Park bathroom updates. We've got a bid from a contractor we're gonna have to cut out those doors from the cinder block to get the new frames in. We're waiting, I think, on one part to fix the magnetic locks. I think there's a chip-related holdup on the one part to control the magnetic locks. So we're kind of waiting to do some of that work till we get the doors in and know they can lock after hours and kind of get back, but we are doing that. Police Department, of course, we talked about animal control, being at the animal party at the pool. And like I said, they did do 19 microchips and 15 vaccinations for those that were there. The motor unit participated in the Iron Horse Shootout competition in Amarillo, and Officer Bliss actually won second place in his category, so.
Oh, that's good.
Apparently, the chief's been out of practice a little too long.
I just didn't tell you.
SROs are back from the SRO conference, so they're ready for the school year. We did complete hiring of the 5th SRO that's in your addendum today, so when's, Donna, you know when Daryl's gonna start?
Yesterday,
So he did make the, I didn't promise the school district we'd make the first day of school, but
we did.
I told him we'd try, and so that worked out really well to do that. So they've got all 5 SROs for the start of
And
the
he's
school
an
system.
experienced SRO.
Yes. I think he's been serving Potter County at River Road for the last several
For a
years.
long time.
Yeah. So he's definitely, you know, he started here, I think, you know, I think it'll be a good fit, and he'll, I have no doubt will finish his career here, knowing him as I do. Of course, like we said, they did additionally worked with Park Rec. Our academy recruit has graduated, passed the T-Cole, and is actually out on the street starting yesterday. And then we're also in the process of completing one other new hire. So with the new SRO and the recruit and one more new hire, so that's 3 that we filled, but two to the deficiencies that we've had. You know, the one's a wash because we added a position and then we hired for it. So we're 2 up, which leaves 4 short, I believe. So, and they might not necessarily like reminding this, and I know we definitely want them all filled, especially with the turnaround coming, but Now that they're 4 short, they are still 2 stronger than full strength when I started at the police department.
Yeah.
And most of the times it wasn't full back then, so we're still overall a little bit to the good and doing what we can. And then, of course, Officer Tullis was invited to throw out the first pitch at the Boots versus Badges baseball game at Hodgetown last week or 2 ago, so. But apparently he didn't do his job very well. The Boots won. So we'll make sure that the chief puts that in his next evaluation. In courts, Michelle Burkhammer completed her level 1 certification through the Texas Municipal Courts Education Center. So both court clerks are now certified through that program. So we're excited about that. They're working on legislative updates now. And so is Stella, you know, with all those wonderful election law changes that she's going to get to go learn about. And working on their next juvenile hearing schedule. Public engagement's also been busy. We had our live music editions for the Oktoberfest for some of the local, and if y'all made it downtown or saw any of that on social media, we had some really good turnouts. Actually, everybody that auditions going to have an opportunity to play at some sort of event throughout the Oktoberfest weekends, whether that's, you know, on Friday night downtown with our drag and things that are going on Friday night, or during the fish fry, which is going on Sunday. There are limited tickets to the fish fry. You know, as we're trying to get back into this, you do have to buy tickets. So if you know anybody that wants to go, we will have a limited number of printed tickets that you can come to City Hall, but there is a website link to get most of your tickets. Now, we will take care of the council.
Cool.
But if you want somebody else, we do advise you to do that. The response has already been pretty good for that, you know, still considering it's a month and a half or 2 months out, but, you know, we've been talking about that for a long time. In 2018, you know, when we had our strategic vision session, we had to draw what we thought the newspaper headline would be when we achieved one of our goals, and I believe that first one was, you know, fish fry back at the Dome. So it's only taken 5 years, but I think that's pretty good considering everything that's happened. So Oktoberfest is coming up. There's a lot more information for that'll be out there. We've also been giving some information for Tats versus Tell, the tattoo artist on 7th Street is going to hold a little event this weekend where some of the profits are going to support the animal shelter, help us buy some microchips and things like that. So we do have some more things coming up at the Johnson Park Youth Center. Starting September 23rd is Movies in the Park will be back. And so the first movie will be September 23rd. There'll be more information about that. They're working on trying to maybe structure some adult sports leagues. That was some of the feedback from our Parks and Recreation survey. We're getting ready for the Halloween Carnival, Halloween night, so I know that Karen's ready to bake about 25 cakes, right?
Or send the fire department again.
Yeah, send the fire department again.
So we're trying to coordinate with anybody else. So there'll be anybody that wants to come be a part of that. You know, they're setting up some space so that we can try to maybe have one unique space for everybody to come. Youth Center's also getting ready to work on a homecoming tailgate again like they did last year out at the Youth Center for some of the kids to come and do some things before the homecoming game. We're getting ready for National Night Out, which is October 3rd. You know, that's the public safety National Night Out where we have some events and let our public safety employees interact with the community in a traumatic event. Youth Center, the Youth Advisory Council is working on their first event, which is going to be a homecoming dance. So they've already been out on themselves and raised a little over $700 to help support that. So that's a
Good job.
kind of good group. We've had 2 mini mural submissions for our mini mural program. We've got some spaces identified where we can paint some more murals with the businesses, so we're working on that. Our community survey results should be done this week or next, so we're getting close to kind of doing that. And she's also been working with the Panhandle Community Services, which, you know, is one of our transportation providers, but they're looking at some ghost or haunted Halloween tours and a Christmas tour in conjunction with them to kind of help outreach and show what public transportation options there are in the community. So that's something to look forward to. There again, I will say again, if you think there's nothing going on in this community, it's because you don't want to do anything or you are living under a rock.
Right.
IT's been busy doing cybersecurity training for City Hall and the PD. The council went through that a couple of months ago, but we finally got that submitted and certified by the state. There's some new procedures that are probably coming up by state law that's going to change some of that stuff. They're cutting over the PD to a new internet service this week, which is going to be some work as they move over all the mobile CAD devices. And of course, they wanted to point out, they wanted to recognize the work of their intern, who's been a great asset to them this summer, and then they were kind of sucking up to me, making sure that I budget for that next year. So. And then Keith's been elected to attend the Certified Government Chief Information Officer course starting next month, and it runs for a year, so we're excited to get him and see him in that. In dispatch, we've got one new dispatcher hired and started, and another one transferred from animal control, so they're back up. At least their positions are full once we get them trained. Of course, Kendra Phillips received a commendation. She was coming back from her NENA school and came across a wreck and stopped and rendered aid, before anybody got there. So we definitely would like to recognize her for that. And then they also took part in their Fritch community event. For OEM, the radar project is nearing completion. They've just got two little issues to work through with the elevation of the radar unit. And so Everbridge changed some of their stuff, so they increased their text credits, so we're pretty much gonna be able to send more text without incurring additional costs, so we might start pushing out more community events and stuff through Everbridge, to those people that are signed up for those type of community alerts. So, but there again, if you think nothing's going on, remember, we put things in the newsletter that comes to your water bill. We've got a community calendar on borgertx.gov. We've got the new Visit Borger.com website. We've got the app that you can download from the Apple or Android App Store, and you can sign up for the notifications through the Everbridge system, which can come to your email and or your cell phone. So we are trying to reach everybody in pretty much any way and every way that we can.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what I have for this month. Any questions?
Busy.
Yeah,
That's all I got to say.
thank you. Thank you, Garrett, for giving us that update.
Push your button
And then
to switch screens.
at this time, we will move on to the consent items. And if there's any questions or comments, and if not, then we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve consent items 6 through 9.
Second.
In the beginning.
And all in favor? And they pass. And item 10, receive a presentation from Singleton Clark, the city's audit firm, and then consider and take appropriate action to receive the fiscal year 2022 annual comprehensive financial report. Mr. Spratman.
Hold on, I've got Robert on my computer. I'm trying to get it switched up there. There it's thinking. Maybe. Yep, there we go. Okay, Rob, we got you if you got us.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
During your presentation, the audio was consistent, but the audio was intermittent. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. My name is Robert Gatilia, and I'm with Singleton Clark, Borger's independent auditor. It's a pleasure to join you from here rather than there. Hopefully next time I'll be there again. It's only been 5 months since the last time I joined you. So I'm here to present for your acceptance the city's audit for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2022. Does everyone have a copy of the audit in some form, electronic or otherwise?
Yes.
It is in their packet, yes.
Okay. In the past, I've used it, flip pages. I've moved away from that for the most part, but there is something that I feel it will help to illustrate the point to open it up. So when I think about this discussion, I start with the big three. Opinion, elements that go into arriving at the opinion, so were there findings, were there recommendations, and then how many adjustments did it take to get to fairly stated and present in accordance with GAAP? And then the last thing is this idea of the health of the general fund by way of average monthly expenditures and what those, what the ending amount represents in those. If we're asked to discuss anything else, I'll throw that in. And so this year I do want to include the idea or the fact that the city was required to have a single audit. So that certainly factors into the discussion. And then I do want to touch on the city's budget. So I'll start with the opinion. Summarizes our relationship, and we did. It discusses what the audit process is, what our responsibilities are, and what our conclusion is, as well as what the city's responsibilities are.
And the basic statement of the opinion is that after having performed the audit and created this report, that the information as far as the financials, footnotes, and supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects and presented in accordance with generally subject to conferences. The type of report, the technical term report is unmodified. That speaks to the fact that the letter has not been changed in any way, so there are no modifications, no exceptions, and no limitations to it. So generally, all entities receive a clean opinion, and so it's important to consider how we got to a clean opinion. And so that discussion relates to, did we have findings? Findings come in two types, compliance and control related. And you did have, as I mentioned, a single audit, and so we have an additional set of procedures relative to federal expenditures. Did we have recommendations? Those come generally in two flavors. A perceived lack of adherence to procedures or lack of adherence. So, and then the number of audit adjustments for the year to get to federal standards. So, for the year under audit, we did not have any findings. Last year, we did have a single finding related to collateral. It did not recur. We did have two recommendations, one of which was related to federal programs and how they're accounted for. Our suggestion is that they be accounted for separately in individual funds, and that accounts specific to them are used in terms of revenues, expenditures, receivables, liabilities, and so on and so forth. The other recommendation that we have related to ACH and EFT payments, and this was something that we mentioned last year, or when we had this discussion in March. Currently, that process has an unmitigated risk, and that a single person can initiate and send cash electronically. And so our suggestion is to take a look at that process and try to mitigate that risk. Our suggestion would be simply to have two people involved. The ability to send large amounts of cash quickly, easily by a single person is certainly something that is concerning relative to the audit.
And can I add, that's one that's been rectified.
Right, Terry has changed that at the bank, so that's been, but at the time of the audit, it had not been, but it is now.
Okay.
So the last item in this kind of aggregation of how did we get to our clean opinion is audit adjustments. And so for the year under audit, we had 14. Related to fiscal year 21, we had 9. So a slight uptick, which I attribute to the transition and learning curve associated with the process now, related to Scott's departure and the fact that you had a single audit for the year, and so there was a learning curve there. I would like the city to be more in the 5 to 10 range, but I don't have a problem with 14. It's certainly not an excessive or egregious amount. So related to the question of how we got to our clean opinion, I think the city.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. Did you say we're at 9 though now, or?
We were 9 last year.
Oh,
9.
and we're 14?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like uptick. It's not a concerning amount. It's certainly not excessive or egregious relative to your size and complexity. But I would like to see you move back toward the 5 to 10 range.
Okay.
So I do believe that the city got to its clean opinion well. Certainly nothing concerning or egregious. There were no findings. You did have a single audit, during the year, and so there were procedures above and beyond what we would normally perform specific to federal programs. So the item that I want to speak in, and this was at Terry's request, so that we're all kind of on the same page, is to take a quick look at your budget, or budget to actual schedule. It's on page 31.
In your packet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
translate that real quick? On PDF.
Well, it's 31 of the, page 31 of the audit.
What page is that?
That would be,
Oh, man, sorry. If you've got it electronically.
Yes.
We can talk about it up here. It's fine. I just thought it would help to look at the actual schedule. Garrett, do you know what PDF page it is?
yeah, I'm just about there.
Okay.
In the 340s.
It's page 235.
235.
So some background on this, for the fact that we're new to you and you to us, and that we've done 2 audits more or less back to back or simultaneously, and that your prior auditor had not emphasized this in the past, we have not dealt with it as we normally would. And so for us, your obligation related to legally adopted budgets is to amend as necessary. And so this was not something from the conversations that we've had with the city that was emphasized in the past. And so the issues that I want to point out and let you know that going forward, we will hold you accountable related to them is our negative variances that exist. And so department heads and the city manager have the ability to move expenditures around within function lines, not between them. And so if we look at the budget, and if it's there to have any real value, we can't think of it in terms of total revenues or total expenditures. That would defeat the purpose of legally adopting it, because it would be more or less a bucket that we could spend however we like. And so the idea is that management properly execute appropriations. And to the extent that they're going to change, they need to seek amendments. And so there were negative variances in general government, sanitation, debt service, and transfers out, which would, in normal circumstances for us, be treated as a finding. There's no consequence to a finding specifically by the state. There's not a consequence, but if, as I said, the budget is to have meaning and force, it's something that should be adopted properly and should be amended as necessary where you're going to change between function lines. And so I encourage the city to visualize their budget to the extent necessary from the perspective of the income statements, whether it's a general fund, debt service, or any other legally adopted budget.
Which is what I would say is like, as you go through the proposed 2024 budget, you will see that it's organized that way by general government and the departments that make up general administration and public safety and some of that. And so we're taking most of this has to do with some of the capital in Fund 65 and how Fund 65 got folded back into those budget line items and some things. But Terry and I have been talking about this, and I do not anticipate this being a problem going forward.
Okay, I have a question because I'm a little confused, so I need to be clear. So is this talking about amendments? I mean, like we do amendments but I was thinking that y'all can move within funds. Are you saying there needs to be amendments within funds?
That's part of it, but we need to look at our amendments and make sure that they're balancing at the categorical level, not just the department level.
Okay.
And
You're
so,
gonna have to explain that to me later.
but you will have your first one of those next meeting as we work through the.
So instead of amendments from where it takes council to do the amendment, where you, now you're saying every amendment, even within the fund?
No.
Okay, I'm
We
sorry,
need to
I'm
make
really
more
confused.
amendments than we're making, both staff-initiated amendments and council-initiated amendments, so that at the end of the year, the categorical budgets don't go over. So like general administrations remains in budget, public safety remains in budget, Public Works remains in budget.
Okay.
But the way that the audit pulls all that together from a lot of different sources, we've got to be a little more holistic in our approach to do that.
Okay. I'll get more information on that later. But,
Sure.
thank you.
And that's why, you know, we haven't emphasized or forced the issue yet. It is something that has to be done as of the last day of the fiscal year, and the idea really is for management to execute on the plan that they've been given. And if they're going to change or modify that plan, they need to go and seek those amendments relative to that change. I stop short generally of asking for changes to revenue, and I would not encourage you to decrease budgets, only to ensure that you increase them where necessary. It's really up to any entity to decide philosophically if they're going to try to maintain some sort of ratio or balance. And so if you have this idea that we want to stay balanced or we want to show positive change, that's something you would have to factor in when you seek amendments to maintain that. But you need to the extent possible, avoid significant or material negative variances.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So the last, go ahead.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That makes sense.
So the last item that I'd like to discuss with you is to a certain extent an operational conversation, but it is post-audit adjustment, and it is a quick look at general health. And so the general fund is the fund of last recourse. It's where your M&O and sales tax are recorded, and so it's important to look at what you have in terms of equity, specifically unassigned fund balance, which you really have discretion over. The city only has unassigned fund balance currently. And so what we do is take the expenditures for the last fiscal year, that being 22. We remove capital expenditures because they're deemed to not be consistent year over year. Divide by 12 and come up with an average monthly amount. And so when you do that math for fiscal year 22, you come up with about $1.2 million per year on average. Or, I'm sorry, per month on average. And when you divide that into your ending unassigned fund balance, you have 5.5 months. As a firm, we recommend between 3 and 6. And when we had this conversation in March, I believe it was around 5. You only put $700,000 into general fund for the year, and so you should have been around 5, give or take, and you've gone to 5.5.
Is that, we're talking about revenue, or our
We're talking about the-
excess revenue?
Not,
Or no?
just, this is reserves as
Our
a whole.
reserve.
So what he's saying is that we've increased our reserve.
Yeah, because we did that really on purpose. but
Well,
maybe-
to
is that a bad
28%,
thing or
but,
something?
no, he's just,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
go ahead, Robert.
The audio is still a little intermittent, so I can't,
Sorry.
at times it kind of goes in and out. And so the idea is, you know, for us, if you've got between 3 and 6, you're really in a good spot. I don't recommend you having less than 1, and I don't necessarily recommend you having a significant amount in terms of double digits without starting to commit or assign, but you're not in that situation presently. 5.5 is perfect. It demonstrates that it's healthy, at least relatively, and so the idea is that how long can the city function
Do what?
without receiving another dollar of revenue?
Right now, without spending
And
downward
if
like
you've got
49%.
gaps between your cash flows, it's important such that you don't have to go out and tap a line of credit, you know, to make payroll and things like that. So,
Okay. Thank you.
From the percentage point, the percentages,
Internet,
the percentages in the audit, and at this audit year, we're at 49% reserve requirement compared to your 28 minimum.
Okay.
So we're good. All of that to say we're good.
Good.
does anyone have any questions related to anything that I discussed or anything else related to the audit?
Is this recorded? Okay. because I might want to listen to it again. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Robert. And we know you put, what is it, 2 years of a lot of time and effort here getting us where we are, and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on his end, we must have some audio issues, but I will just reiterate in text.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
The audio coming back is intermittent. So I just want to summarize, express some thanks, and then see if you have any questions. So if you can hear me,
We can.
you're welcome. Thank you for allowing us to serve as your auditor. I'd like to thank finance, utilities, payroll, court, everyone that participated in the audit, especially Garrett and Terry. I should have said Terry first, probably. In summary, clean opinion.
She's finally gonna go on vacation.
Opinion that was gotten to, well, a little bit of homework, healthy fund balance, and some homework related to the budget, but I think everything is in order and the city is in good shape. So, do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so.
I don't.
No? Thank you so much. So if, can I go on? So if there's nothing else, sorry. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the fiscal year 2022 annual comprehensive financial report.
I'll second.
All in favor? And it
No, 'cause I've got
passes.
just the-
And then item 11, consider and take appropriate action on resolution R-021-23 denying Southwestern Public Service Company's proposed increase in base rates. Mr. Edwards. Good to see you,
afternoon.
Eddie.
Gotta have glasses, you don't when you're tired. Honorable Mayor and council members, it's a pleasure to speak to you this afternoon on this. Council has taken a couple of actions on this prior to this. This is, hopefully will be the final action on this case. A little bit of background, on February 8th, 2023, SBS filed with the city and the Public Utility Commission an application to increase its base revenues by approximately $148 million. They also had an update period in there of the previous 3 months of the last calendar year. When that was rolled into the process as of March, that increase went to $158 million. On March 7th, I believe, council took action to suspend that request. That's a pretty standard procedure that we do to allow us as the cities. You guys are the jurisdiction. They're overseer for the in-city rates. And then that was done. That extension or suspension adds 135 days to the process. The process actually ended on, or the final date to deny the case actually ended on July 28th. However, with an agreement with SPS, we've extended that for 30 days. So essentially, the application, we're asking the council to go ahead and deny that today, completely deny it. This will be appealed to the PUC. It'll be rolled in with the other 80 some odd cities in the SBS service area, and that'll go through. We met with SBS about 2 weeks ago on their next filing, which they have already filed. They are interested in settlement of this case. So if we do settle it, this council could potentially see one more action on this case. If they don't settle it and it goes all the way through the PUC process, then this would be the final action on this case. Like I say, I would answer any questions you guys might have. I mean, I did a pretty good history for you in your memo.
Yeah.
And I just want to add just a little bit, because I know that Excel's been getting it really hard lately with everybody's electric bills, with as hot as it's been. And I mean, we definitely want to try to keep rates as low as we can, but, you know, even if we deny and tell them they can't have anything, the PUC is going to give them something. And we do need to continue to invest in the electric grid as we continue to use more and more electricity. So as the public sees this, I know you know, there might be that impetus to want to say, you know, you need to stop them from doing anything, but I'm not sure that that's realistic. In their plan, and whether it works or not with the next filing and adding solar and some other federally supported fuel, would be to reduce your bill by reducing the fuel cost portion of that bill, because the fuel cost doesn't go into the system. It doesn't go to really Excel, it just offsets a cost. So that's their PR plan. You know, we'll look at how that goes, but I just kind of wanted to, because I know that Sam, you know, the new Jesse for Excel pretty much got booed when he was up at Dalhart for the XIT parade or whatever he was at, and I think that's a little bit unfair. I mean, I know that bills are going up and that electric's expensive, but it is also needed.
Well, I would agree with what Garrett said. You know, we view this as, this is a court case. You know, a plaintiff and a defendant. That's essentially what it is. It's an administrative court case. And we're in adversarial positions. But Excel has done, and SPS especially, has done a great job in keeping our entire Panhandle region's electric rates the lowest in the state. We are the lowest in the state in this region for power service. And I think we're also the most reliable. Look what happened to ERCOT during the freeze a couple of years ago. I'm only aware that we had, one or two brownouts last year, where the rest of the state had many. So that takes an investment in the electric grid. You know, we work in partnership with Excel, even though it's an adversarial relationship in a rate case. We work in partnership with Excel, and you know, we you know, unlike the industry, which only cares about the bottom line, how much they're going to pay, we want the service and the reliability, and understand that you have to pay for that. That is in form of investments, and kind of alluding to what Garrett said on their next filing. They're filing for additional solar, a little bit of wind, and some batteries. When you take a look at their, you know, I'll be happy to talk about this in a work session if Garrett would like me to, but when you take a look at their reserve, you know, they're required to carry a reserve. That's what keeps you from having brownouts. You know, those peak days, just like we do in our water system and sewer system, we have those peak days that, you know, we have to make sure we have enough capacity to cover those. Well, there's a reserve amount that they're required above that. That reserve is now shrinking in the Excel service area. Used to, it was several hundred megawatts a day we had as a reserve. By 2027, if they don't do some serious more infrastructure, that megawatt is going to be about 35. So there's going to be a lot more investments coming this way, and unfortunately a lot more rate cases. But there again, you weigh the cost benefit. We want reliable service. We want reliable electricity. When it's 110 degrees, we want 72. And that's what it takes to get there. Likewise, it's y'all's responsibility through organizations like AXM, and which has been a really great organization. You know, there's about 11 member cities that form the steering committee for the entire AXM. Borger has always been heavily involved in that, and hopefully they will continue to be. You know, it's that partnership that we arrive at what is a fair rate and a fair rate of return for Excel. And in turn, we get that really good service at high level dependability and reliability and sustainability. So,
AXM in the last 10 years has probably saved $200 million on
typically, I mean,
base rates.
There again, Excel is, in a lot of people, well, they just do this to make money. Well, they're a company. That's what they're supposed to be doing, is making money and returning for their shareholders. Our job is to protect our taxpayers, which are also their ratepayers.
And we have mitigated some of those increases. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to reinforce that, you know, because I even saw it in my bill,
Oh, yeah.
but I also like it cool.
Right.
So it does, I mean, because for some reason, I was thinking that PUCT was going to do what they feel like they got to do anyway. And so it does benefit to,
Well, I mean, ultimately, the PUC, Public Utility Commission of Texas, will likely be the decider of this case. We are heavily involved in it, and of course, Excel reimburses us for our legal costs and expenses. That's, they're required to by law, as long as they're reasonable and customary. The problem with the PUCC is their staff, they have a lot of turnover,
yeah.
and it's worse now than it was 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, we would negotiate with PUC, and everybody would be on the same page, and these things go right through. Now the PU staff, they're there, some of them are there 6, 8 months, and they're gone somewhere else. So there's no experience in there. That just reinforces the need for cities like ourselves to participate at that level.
And most of these, if we reach settlement,
Yeah, that's what I
then
was wondering
it
about
is the
settlement.
agreement between us and Excel.
Okay.
And probably 90% of the time, they're settled.
To be honest with you, this case right now is valued at $158 million in revenue. This will likely settle, whether it be through an open settlement, a black box settlement, or through the PUC, somewhere in the 198 to 106 million range. They are due an increase. They absolutely are. What we just need to make sure is that increase is fair to them and fair to the citizens.
I've got a couple of questions concerning this. First, if we deny this, which I'm assuming we're going to, how long before they would reach a settlement?
Hard to say. This could drag on through the PUC probably another 9 months.
Okay, but we wouldn't be hit with another raise until after that is settled?
Well, they
You said there
have
was one
already
in the works.
implemented what they call interim rates. Usually one of the first things that happens, there'll be a rider placed, and the rates, whatever the ultimate rates are set in this case, they will relate back all the
So
way to
everything will be
March
backpaid through?
15th or so of 2023, and there'll be a rider.
Can
A
either
lot
be
of
a
those
credit or an addition,
Yeah, and it
depending
shows
on
it
what
on
the.
your
Credit or
bill.
addition. We have rider, if you look at your bill right
Yeah,
now, there's
it
probably
has
3 or
on there.
4 riders on there. Some of those will be dropping off as other come on, so they kind of wash out
Okay.
in there, but they'll.
I have another question for you. How do you phrase this? I know that from what you just said, they want us to pay for their reserves, sort of, so they can have more reserves. Are they shipping the reserves off to, like, California?
No.
Because I've heard this is why I was asking. That was a loaded question, but,
No, to answer your question, no, they don't ship. Generally, they are purchasing power. Excel purchases more power than they ship out. It would be nice to be able to sell some power if we had enough generation capacity to sell that. Generation capacity is something.
Without the purchase power, they wouldn't even have that
No.
surplus.
Now, they do have the ability to shift power into other members of what is called the Southwest Power Pool. As a big scheme of things, the United States has 3 electric grids. It has the Eastern Grid, which is everything, Eastern Grid, Western Grid, and ERCOT. ERCOT is 100% Texas, with the exception of SWEPCO, which is in the north, like Gainesville, Wichita Falls, place like that, and SPS is up in the Panhandle. The Eastern Grid is everything else west of New Mexico, and then Western Grid is everything west of New Mexico. So those can be switched between them, but it's very unusual for that to do that.
But it's pretty much
not
saying is we can't send it to
unusual-
California anyway. If we were sending it
Correct.
somewhere, it would not be California.
Correct. It is not unusual for power to be transitioned within the Southwest Power Pool, which is our think of them as little mini regions inside of the Eastern Grid. We are on the very southern end of that Eastern Grid.
And the city is kind of like your water pressure areas. So, the water towers support different pressure areas, even though we get the water from the same source.
The-
So the well field is the eastern interconnect, and then the Fairlanes Tower is the Southwest Power Pool, and the 11th Street Tower would be the New Mexico or whatever
Right.
Louisiana or
I just know we all hear things, but I wanted clarification on that, so if somebody comes to me, so we're shipping all of our power over here. No,
No.
say, no, we're not.
No, we're not.
Most of that is we're just
Very little
growing.
power is sent out of the SPS service area to other areas from SPS. Used to, that was more common. They had a lot of wholesale agreements where they would provide power to these like co-ops and things like that within the area. About 4 or 5 rate cases ago, we, as part of a settlement, we asked them to get out of those wholesale deals. Because essentially, the ratepayers were building the generation capacity, they were selling the power, and we didn't feel that the ratepayers were getting an adequate return on that money. So all the way, I think about 2020 or 21, the last one of those contracts for those had expired.
which is also why they haven't invested as much in generation, because they had all that surplus capacity from when they started canceling all their wholesale agreements. So they've been able to delay this a little bit, and now we're getting to the point to where they don't have enough power.
Eventually, right now, I think this year we have about 350 amount of reserve of a peak day. We have 350 megawatts of reserve. By 2027, if more generation is not added or more contracts for purchase power to bring power into our area are not agreed upon, that reserve number drops down to about 35.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I heard this number, and I realize nobody has a crystal ball, but would it be fair to say to our residents they should probably expect about a 5% increase in electricity year over year for some time?
I would say that that's a fair assessment. If you look at this particular case, the increase is around 20% on base revenues. When you fold that in with, obviously, a lot of that revenue is to pay for infrastructure they're building, solar, wind, specifically more wind in this one than anything else, there is a reduction in fuel costs. So when you offset that, the overall increase is about 13.5% in this particular rate case. When it's settled, it's going to be in the neighborhood of probably 5 to 8% would be my guess.
So
March 15th.
year over year,
But like I said,
our our citizens should expect
So it depends.
5 to 8% increase in power for the foreseeable future,
Yes.
That interrelated
barring a
community
recession
credit
or
a small rider.
the invention of fusion power or something like that. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have anything? If not, then I'll, thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'll entertain a motion. And then, I do have a question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. What we're doing is, we are denying to accept that $158 million, or $1 million increase.
That's correct. We are
Okay.
denying the request that they
Okay.
made back in February
So that we
for that
can settle
rate
at a lower
increase.
amount. Okay.
Like I say, they're ready to talk settlement, and I'm sure we will be.
Okay.
And Excel wants it denied,
Yeah.
because keep in mind, when we deny it, by sending it to the PUC, they get one rate for the whole area instead of a rate for inside Borger city limits, outside Borger city limits, inside Fridge city limits, outside Fridge city limits.
Okay.
And this has to do with the
Sorry,
80
thank
plus other entities.
Right, 82 city municipalities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they want it denied so that it gets to the PUC, and then we work through the negotiations so that we get a standard.
Everybody gets the same rate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Makes
that's
sense.
just really another example of the cooperation we have with them.
Yeah.
About 70 of the 80 some odd cities denied this back in February. And in only the steering committee cities, we asked to suspend, just reduces the amount of paperwork.
Oh, okay.
on that. So,
Makes sense. Thank you.
That was one of the
Okay, I'll
bills.
entertain a motion, sorry.
I move to adopt Resolution R-021-23 denying Southwestern Public Service Company's February 8, 2023 application to increase base rates.
A second.
And all in favor? And it passes.
thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. And then item 12, consider and take appropriate action on Resolution R-022-23, reappointing Mr. Glendon Jett to the Canadian River Water Authority Board of Directors for a 2-year term. Mr. Spratt?
So, Glendon served numerous times. They served 2 years on Cromwell. The 11-member cities that support that board. Glendon's been pretty involved in their salinity control project. It was actually at the last meeting talking about their RFP, and they're getting ready to, of course, luckily, salinity's become a little less of a problem with all the water that's come into the lake. So that, it's still a little higher, but that's bought them a little time. But, Glendon is the ex-engineer, retired engineer, I guess I shouldn't say ex, that makes it sound bad, but, he's been a good asset for us, and we definitely would appreciate him continuing to serve, but I'll entertain any other questions you might have on that.
If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move that resolution R-022-23, reappointing Mr. Glendon Jett, P.E. to Cromwell's Board of Directors for a 2-year term beginning August the 1st, 2023, be approved as submitted.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And item 13, consider and take appropriate action to approve addendum number 1 to the interlocal agreement for school resource officers between the City of Borger and the Borger Independent School District.
So as we discussed in our last work session, House Bill 3 requires armed security at all school campuses now. School district had inquired about adding a 5th SRO so that they could have that at the DAEP campus, which is the old Gateway. So luckily, compared to a lot of schools, we were pretty close. Last year when we added the 4th SRO, we got an SRO on each primary campus. And so this was kind of the only one lacking. So we did it. This has been included in the updated proposed budget. The addendum, just all it really does is change the number to 5 and then update the financial split, so it's still the same split. The budget impact to the city was about an additional $12,000 over what we already had budgeted, and what's going to be a $52 million budget, so it's pretty small for us, and I think well-deserved and well-needed. And like we talked about, we do have that position filled and starting there. So I know the school district and this council, school safety and public safety in general is a priority. So all this does is amend that agreement that we already approved and adding the funding and the 5th officer.
If there's no question, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that addendum number 1 to the interlocal agreement between the Borger Independent School District and the City of Borger for the fiscal year of 2024 School Resource Officer Program be approved as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? And passes. And item 14, receive a presentation, conduct a public hearing, and then consider and take appropriate action to introduce on first reading ordinance O-006-23, adopting a combined tax rate of 0.6475 per $100 valuation for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Spradlin.
It seems like we do this more than once a year, but.
I know it is.
But so, yeah, it's time to kind of discuss the tax rate, and as I do every year this time of year, I want to start off by just kind of reminding everybody about our transparency page and resources on the website. That's borgertx.gov. As we start talking about the budget, we do have a new online budget tool this year, so if you go to borgertx.gov/budget, you can see that budget and interact with it online, which I think is a little easier to kind of navigate and see. It's still kind of in the proposed budget form, which is just finances, but there'll be a lot more coming with that. You can see from this screen that from that transparency page, you just click on those big links to take you to the proposed budget or the proposed online version, which is, I think, pretty good. And we'll have more on that during the budget presentation, but I did just kind of want to remind everybody about that. The tax rate history and everything's up on that page too. So of course, the first thing that we do when we look at setting a combined tax rate, we always wait for that appraised value to come in. So this year, our certifies freeze adjusted value, because as you recall, the City Council adopted the freeze for senior and disabled citizens many years ago. So we take our appraised value and then we reduce the amount where that freeze gets in. And so our total appraised value this year was $511,035,000. That's up from $471,824,000. And we talked about this again last year. I think it's probably kind of important to reiterate it again this year, because I know some people freaked out when they got their appraisal statement from the appraisal district again this year. Just because your appraisal went up doesn't mean that your tax bill's gonna go up. And the way tax law is with the no new revenue rate and all of those things, it ends up depending on what the tax rate that the entities set. So really, to be honest, freaking out over your appraisal isn't what you should be doing. Paying attention to what all the taxing entities are doing is probably more important. But we did have a pretty good increase in the appraised value. So now when you look at what that means for the tax rates, so I like these two charts because if you look at what the city's done, yes, appraisals have gone up a little bit, but our tax rate has come down way more than what the appraisals have gone up. So I think, that just reinforces what this council has instructed city staff to do and try to, be respectful of the resources that the community is giving us. And I think we've done a pretty good job in being able to provide adequate and high-level quality services while still, pushing that tax rate down. So our proposed tax rate this year is a 0.6475. That's down from 0.71 last year, and that's down from a high of 0.863. So if you look at that, we're getting close to, it's a 23-cent tax decrease in the last several years. So I think that's something to be proud of, and I know this council is, and I know I am.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. And so when we look at that, the current tax rate, like I said, is 0.71 per $100 valuation. Our no new revenue rate this year, that is the rate that would generate the same amount of revenue in fiscal '24 that we generated in fiscal '23, is 0.65. The voter approval rate, that's the maximum rate that we can set without it going to an election of the voters, is 0.87. So our proposed rate is 0.6475. That rate is comprised of a maintenance and operation rate of 0.475 and an INS or debt payment rate of 0.16. So when you put that together, that's a 0.625 cent decrease over last year, and it is a 0.004 under the no new revenue rate. So this is actually a tax decrease again this year, so it's not just the no new revenue rate, it is below the no new revenue rate, so it is a slight tax decrease. So when we looked at the impact comparison that rate will do in 2023 compared to 2022, so the tax rate's dropping, the rate itself is a 10% reduction. The average value of the average house in the community was up 9% between the 2 years. So the average tax, based on that average rate that the city will receive, it's not zero, but it's 0.001%. So you can see that with some of the differences in no new properties and some of the other things that go into that tax rate, if you have the average valued home, your tax bill is actually going up like 75 cents a year. So really, it's staying pretty close to the same. So with everything else going up a lot, I think, that's definitely positive. When you look at what that does for our total tax levy, that's a total reduction of about 6% on what we're actually going to make, because of course not everybody owns that average house price, and there's some fluctuation in how that distributes. But last year we estimated 3.651 in revenue. This year it should bring in 3.43. So about $180,000 reduction overall in tax revenue. And then of that value, we did have almost $9 million of new value on the tax roll, which is about twice of what we had last year. So some of that's the Tractor Supply and things that are finally starting to hit. So that's why you see a 10% decrease in the rate, but a 6% decrease in revenue, because we are allowed to make revenue off of new property. But so that's the basis for the tax rate that we're proposing, and we've talked to the council about this, and now we can have the public hearing and answer any questions, or I can answer any questions before that if you have any.
And I'm gonna have to ask, because I have to ask every time, do we make a motion and then have that public hearing?
Public hearing first.
Okay, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
All right, so I will open a public hearing. And if there's anyone that would like to speak. And I see no one, so I'm gonna close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion.
I move to introduce on first reading ordinance O-006-23, adopting a combined tax rate of .647500 per $100 valuation for fiscal year 2024.
I second.
And all in favor? And it passes. I think I got mixed up because I was looking at the
15.
next, I was looking at the next one where we need to set a public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, so item 15, receive the fiscal year 2024 proposed operating budget, schedule a public hearing for September 5th, 2023 at 6:30 PM, and then consider and take appropriate action to introduce on first reading, ordinance O-007-22, adopting the fiscal year 2024 operating budget. Mr. Spradlin.
So I don't have just a whole lot to say. The proposed budget is online, like we talked about in the transparency section. It's in this packet. We provided it to the council a couple times, but there are a lot of ways for the public to access it. We will have a presentation at the next council meeting, for the public hearing on all the details of that budget. So this is just the first step in receiving it. But if you do have any questions right now, I'll answer those. But if not, I would just suggest that in the public hearing, and we'll go into more detail next meeting.
Okay. If not, then I will entertain a motion.
I move to receive the fiscal year 2024 proposed operating budget schedule, a public hearing for September the 5th, 2023 at 6:30 PM, and to introduce ordinance O-007-22, adopting the fiscal year 2024 operating budget.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And then at this time, we will go into executive session in compliance with Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, Open Meetings Law. The council will retire into executive session related to Section 551.072 for discussions regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, to discuss the possible purchase of real property to support housing development.
Thank you all. See you next time.
Yes. Thank you for all you do, Brandon.
And you're good to go whenever.
Okay, well, we're back from executive session where there was no action there will be no action taken. And at this time, we'll consider item 17, consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for coming, Terry.
Yes.